So, what is CSS? CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. CSS saves a lot of work. It can control the layout of multiple web pages all at once. With CSS, you can control the color, font, the size of text, the spacing between elements, how elements are positioned and laid out, what background images or background colors to be used, and much more. CSS can be added to HTML documents in 3 ways. Firstly, inline, by using the style attribute inside HTML elements. Secondly, internal, by using a style element in the head section. Finally, external, by using a link element to link to an external CSS file. An inline CSS is used to apply a unique style to a single HTML element. The following example sets the text color of the H1 element to tomato, and add a red border. To use CSS inline, we will start with the HTML style property, then define the CSS properties, separated by semicolon. An internal CSS is used to define a style for a single HTML page, and often defined in the head section of an HTML page, within a style element. We will delete this inline property, save changes, and reload the web page. Immediately, all of the H1 heading changed to green, here and here. Next, I will create a few new heading tags. If I reload the website, this heading tag will also turn green. So, how can we add different CSS to these 2 heading tags? We will use the HTML ID attribute. The ID attribute is used to point to a specific style declaration in a style sheet. Similarly, I will also add an ID for this heading tag. The syntax for ID is, write a hash character, followed by an ID name. Then, define the CSS properties within curly braces. Here, I'm going to make this H1 tag turn green. If I reload the web page, only this tag would turn green. The other tag won't get discolored, because we just CSS for the heading tag with a specific ID. Similarly, for the remaining heading tag, I will turn red. Another way to add CSS to elements is to use the class attribute of the HTML. The HTML class attribute is used to specify a class for an HTML element. Multiple HTML elements can share the same class. To create a class, write a period, dot, character, followed by a class name. Then, define the CSS properties within curly braces. Here, I will convert the text of the 2 heading tags to uppercase. Both these H1 tags will be affected, because we use the same class for them. HTML elements can belong to more than one class. To define multiple classes, separate the class names with a space. The element will be styled according to all the classes specified. In the following example, the heading element belongs to both the My class, and also to Your class, and will get the CSS styles from both of the classes. One thing to note, is that there is a difference between the class attribute, and the ID attribute. A class name can be used by multiple HTML elements, while an ID name must only be used by one HTML element within the page. If I reload the web page, our H1 tags still capitalize, and also have a purple border. We have been familiar with embedding CSS inline with style tags, and embedding CSS at the beginning of HTML files. However, both of these methods are not recommended. Since it is difficult to maintain projects, when we have a large amount of HTML and CSS. The most common way to add CSS is to keep the styles in external CSS files. In the coding directory, we will create a file to write CSS, called style.css. In order to be able to embed this particular file in the HTML, we will use a link element to link to an external CSS file. Rel stands for relationship, specifies the relationship between the current document and the linked document. Here will be the style sheet. Ref specifies the location of the linked document. I will move all the CSS to the file we just created. If I reload the web page, nothing changes. All of our CSS is working. In this tag, I will assign it a new class. Instead of writing CSS inline, or writing in HTML file. This time, I will write in a separate CSS file. With ID, we will start with a hashtag character, followed by the name of the ID. Here, I will make the text larger, with the font size property, bold text, with the font weight, and finally turn the text color to yellow. Save changes. Pay attention to this tag. If I reload the web page, this tag will be changed. With the separation of the CSS from the HTML, it makes it easier to manage the CSS and maintain the code. Here, I will follow the example with creating a button. To CSS this button, I will add a class called btn. After that, reload the website. This is our button. Looks pretty simple. In the style file, we will CSS for this button. Since we define the class, it will start with a dot, followed by the class name. Here, I will make the button a bit higher than before, with the height property. The border radius, to define the radius of the element's corners. Use cursor pointer, so when we hover the mouse to the button, a hand click will appear, instead of the default arrow pointer. I want to create one more effect. When hovering the button will change color. To do this, we will use the hover property of CSS. I want the button to turn green when we hover the mouse over this button. Here our button is inactive. I need to remove the white space here. Immediately, our button changed color when we hover the mouse. Similarly, we can also define more CSS properties. Here, the button will turn red, and the text will also be capitalized. We have learned through the basic HTML tags. Another tag we also use very often is the table. To define a table, we will use table tag. Inside is the content of this table. We'll start with the tr tag. Tr means table row, is the content element of the table. We will create a header for the table, with th tag, which means table head. I want to create a table consisting of the first 3 columns, with number order, name, and phone number. I will create the next row for the table. This time we use tag td, which means table data. We will create 3 tag table data, corresponding to 3 columns of table head. Copy this tag to create more table rows. After that, we will alter the data, to make these rows look different. If I reload the website, this is our table. The table header consists of 3 columns, bolded. Below is the content of the table, represented by the table row. Next, we will add CSS to this table to make it nicer. First, we'll make this table full width, with the width property set to maximum, 100%. I will add comments here. TR is table row, TH is table head, TD is table data. Next, I will add a border to this table. I will add a border for each of our data cells. Here is the table, then the data table. Similarly, we will add a border to the table header. As you can see, our border is composed of 2 layers, because the intersecting borders are being added together. We will use the border collapse property. Finally, use text align to adjust the text center. Another HTML property, which we also use very often, is lists. HTML lists allow web developers to group a set of related items in lists. An unordered list starts with the UL tag. Each list item starts with the li tag. The list items will be marked with bullets, small black circles, by default. An ordered list starts with the OL tag. Each list item starts with the li tag. The list items will be marked with numbers by default. We can also add CSS to these li tags. I will change the color of this tag to pink. We can also add hyperlinks within li tags. Here, if we click on the li tag text, we will redirect to google.com. Target specifies where to open the linked document. We use blank, so the destination link will be opened in a new tab. With HTML, we can also insert emoji. Here we need to know the emoji's Unicode code. In this tutorial, we have become familiar with the basic attributes of HTML and CSS. Thank you for watching the video, and see you in the next videos.